Hello and welcome. My name is Tom Rock. I'm the Vice Provost for Student Affairs at Teachers College, and I'm delighted to see you here. Student conduct is such an important topic. You've undoubtedly signed up for this because maybe you have some questions about conduct, and you also are probably looking to understand our expectations and make sure that you're successful from day one at Teachers College. That's our goal as well, to provide you the information, make sure you're successful in and outside of the classroom. So I'm going to go through some very important guidelines and policies with you about our expectations of what it means to be a student at Teachers College. We do have high expectations for you in the classroom, and that section is called academic integrity. And we also have high expectations for you outside of the classroom. That's really being a good citizen, being kind, being respectful, and that is called general misconduct. So our student code of conduct at Teachers College covers both of those, right? So it's general misconduct and it's academic integrity. I'm going to go through some really important and critical information for you today so that you understand, and hopefully there won't be any questions or issues coming up later. And I'm going to share my screen with you. I'm going to first talk about our expectations. Our expectations, again, what it means to be a student at TC, talk about some really important definitions. What does that mean? And then I'll go through the critical components of both academic integrity and general misconduct. We do have informal procedures and we have formal procedures. I also want to talk a little bit today about the Columbia University rules of conduct, because as a student at Teachers College, you are subject to both the Teachers College Code of Conduct, but you should also be aware of the Columbia University Code of Conduct. You are part of the broader community at Teachers College, which does obviously include all of Columbia University. So first, as we go through our expectations, what it means to be a student at Teachers College. Academic integrity is the highest, really one of the principles that we uphold at the highest level. You're coming to Teachers College because of our academics. Our academics are preeminent. So we really expect that our students are going to enter the classroom space and enter our academic space with a high level of integrity. So that really means, you know, presenting your own ideas, doing your own work, giving credit where credit is due. And I'm going to go through that with you when we get to the academic integrity section. Under general misconduct, again, it really means being a good citizen, being kind, thinking about your behavior, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. For definition, okay, this is our policy on student conduct and academic integrity. The definition section is important. It's right here. And under definitions, it's really important to understand who are we talking about. When we think about our code of conduct, what is the population? Who are we speaking about? We're speaking about students. And for the purpose of our student conduct code, a student is anyone enrolled, any student enrolled in a degree program, as a matriculated degree student or a non-degree student who's taking a course for credit. Those are the students who are really affirming our code and who must abide by the Teachers College Code of Conduct. Now, in terms of, some students will ask and they'll say, well, I'm not living on campus, I'm a part-time student, does that matter? I'm commuting. Right now, everyone's commuting because we're virtual for the fall, but that doesn't really matter. So we care about your behavior, whether you're living on campus, off campus, as long as you are an enrolled student at Teachers College. This really matters to us, and we take that very, very seriously. So again, as long as you are an enrolled student, that's the most important piece that defines who is subject to the student conduct code. Now, I also want to talk about the process. Well, I want to go into a little bit about academic integrity. So that's the fundamental purpose, right? You're here at Teachers College because you're pursuing the pursuit of knowledge, the highest principles of academic integrity. So this means that we all have a responsibility to uphold those standards. You do as a student, our faculty members do. And so academic integrity or misconduct under academics, cheating, plagiarism, fabrication, duplicate submissions, you really cannot submit a paper that you've already submitted for another grade. That is a form of academic misconduct. Misrepresentation of records. So you can really familiarize yourself with the list, but it's basically just being dishonest in the academic space. And those who engage in academic misconduct can expect sanctions. It could be a warning, it could be suspension, it could even lead to dismissal if there's something that's really so blatant or an intentional academic misconduct. So in terms of plagiarism, that is something that students often have a lot of questions about. And a plagiarism means that you're using the ideas, data, or language of someone else without specific or proper acknowledgement. Students are often confused about this. And I always will recommend it's better to oversight, right? So as you're writing your papers, unless it's your own idea, you must give proper citation. So the internet is just confuse some research objectives. I'm not sure Google is the best place to go as your first resource when you're writing your research paper. Maybe go to the library, go to the Teachers College Library, conduct some research through journals and periodicals. If something is on the internet, it was someone else's thought. And that's how it got published on the internet. So even if you're doing some internet searches like that, you still have to give credit unless you put that idea yourself on the internet or on Google. So you have to really be careful with that. Teachers College, we often will use an academic integrity software to run our papers through to make sure that they are clear and on the high bar. So you don't want your professors to be suspicious or to run your papers through that system to see if there's a problem. And your faculty and your professors will talk about this in your classes. If you have any questions about, your paper or about writing, our Graduate Writing Center is available for you, as well as just talking to the professors. It's always easier to speak with the professors first before you submit a paper. If you have any questions about that, go to the faculty first and ask them. And we do follow the American Psychological Association, APA, for proper citations. So you will want to familiarize yourself with the APA writing style. Again, your faculty will speak about this in their classes. So again, if you have any questions about it, it's really just ask your professors, really before you submit a paper. Under general misconduct, you can see what violates general misconduct. Disorderly conduct, forgery, theft, whether it's of something or identity theft, failure to comply with authorized directions, failure to engage in responsible social conduct and to model good civil conduct and citizenship. Again, this goes back to my first statement of really just being kind and being a good citizen of the space that you're in. Also, the internet and being on social media, there's, we don't want to have an issue with cyberbullying or something that often also could happen online that could be subject to our code of conduct. So there are informal procedures and there are formal procedures for both academic integrity and general misconduct. So we try to resolve conflicts and we try to resolve disputes in an informal way. We really do not want to go through formal processes if we can help it. We don't want to have to sanction a student or to punish a student. So we try to resolve as best we can in an informal way. So under academic integrity, the faculty member has a responsibility. So if they suspect that there was some academic misconduct, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, we would like them to provide the student with the opportunity, right? So you could meet with a professor to discuss this. The professor obviously has a concern. So the first step is that discussion. So after that discussion with you, the instructor will decide whether this alleged violation was intentional or unintentional. And then the instructor will propose a resolution to our Office of Graduate Student Life, to our director, to really decide on sanctions or decide if we have to go to a formal hearing of some sort. So sometimes that discussion with the professor, that's it. The professor basically says, don't ever do this again. It was unintentional. I know that you didn't really, understand. Or the professor might give a warning. The professor could fail you on that assignment. The professor could fail you in the course. Or the professor feels that it is so blatant that it must go to a formal conduct hearing process. And so that would be the extreme level of an academic integrity or student conduct hearing. So that's the process for informal under academic integrity. The process is a little bit different for the informal process for general misconduct. Usually when there's general misconduct, there's a complainant and a respondent. The complainant has brought the complaint forward against someone else. We try to, again, resolve that in an informal way. Can I be helpful, and could I help facilitate a discussion between these two students or between these two parties to try to resolve the conflict informally, whether it's an apology, something written, and if either party is uncomfortable coming together or maybe being in a meeting together, we can try some other things. We could try facilitated conversation, either with myself, perhaps with the ombuds. We could try mediation. We could even do, no contact, like these two students cannot have contact with one another. Or it could go to a hearing. If all of our attempts at informal resolution do not work out, we then will have to go to a formal hearing. In a formal hearing, whether it's academic integrity issue or general misconduct, students will be presented to a panel. And there's a panel that's made up of faculty, staff, and students who are trained to go through the student conduct process. And I would be involved. I would be informing both the complainant and the respondent of next steps. And it's a time process, and we go through the hearing. It's not a legal process, it's an institutional process. And then at the end of that process, the job of that hearing panel is to determine whether or not the whether or not the respondent is responsible or not responsible for that behavior. If the panel has determined that the respondent is responsible, they will make recommendations for sanctions. And then we must go through sanctions. And again, the sanction could be a warning, a written warning, suspension, expulsion, if something is really some bad behavior. So that's the process that we'll go through for informal versus a formal hearing. Okay, and then finally, I did want to talk a little bit about the Columbia University Code. So the Columbia University Code is also listed on our site. And again, we really just mentioned, I want to make sure that people understand that they need to be aware of the Columbia University rules of conduct, which are very similar to the Teachers College. But again, just be aware that being part of our community, you're part of the greater Columbia University community. A section that's right above Columbia University that I should have mentioned, and I do want to mention, is the section on student organization. So we have several recognized and approved student clubs and organizations at Teachers College, and to assume a leadership role, which I hope many of you will, we have expectations as well. Any student who's rising to the level of a student leader should be in good academic and conduct standing. We can restrict membership from a student organization. We can also hold a student organization accountable for something. If an organization has done something that we're really not proud of or don't think represents the college well. So I just wanted to highlight that to you as well, if you decide to join a student org, which again, I hope that many of you will. So much like when you were an undergraduate student, there were rules. There were rules for conduct. There were rules for behavior. You probably heard a lot about it. In graduate school, there are as well. And maybe they're a little different because you're in graduate school, you're older, you're more mature, many of you are working professionals, and I doubt you will have a problem. But it is still important to know and understand the expectations that we have. So that's why I wanted to go over this information with you, and I'm happy to answer questions. But I hope that you will familiarize yourself with our code and our expectations so that you will hit the ground running and that you will be successful from day one. That's the goal. And if you have any questions at all about this, you can always reach out to me. Again, Tom Rock, Vice Provost for Student Affairs. My email is tpr4@tc.columbia.edu. Or when we're back on campus, I'm on the first floor of Thorndike Hall, 163. So I look forward to meeting you and seeing you very, very soon. But until then, we will be engaging with each other virtually and online. Okay, be well, be safe, and thanks for attending today's webinar.